Again, education was facing a $400 million cut. We drew the line in the sand. We ended up having to negotiate a $10 million NIC, which impacts things not as essential in the classroom. We have to give up, for example, books for the libraries. Every school typically buys 3 or 4 books a year, but they have to do with what they've got in the library now and not be able to purchase new books. We've received high marks on education funding in this state from the people involved in education. We've worked with them before the legislative session, we worked with them during the legislative session. I just got a letter today from the Superintendent's Association thanking us and this administration and the legislature for working so diligently in protecting education funding. The Huntsman-Herbert administration has been very good at putting more money into education, over $900 million increase since the beginning of our term in 2005. And even with the cuts we've had to have these last couple of years because of the economy, we're still $600 million to good, with an increase in population of 15.9% increase in population. We in fact increased education funding over 32%. So double what we've had in growth in the student population. Let me just talk about private sector expansion. Again, that's a key thing, as I mentioned, for economic growth. I've put together what I call the dream team. I understand that the private sector is where growth comes from. If we're going to create jobs, economic opportunity, it's not the government. The government, in fact, ends up being a dampener on economic expansion. We either tax you so you business people have a hard time with the bottom line. We put regulations on you that make it unprofitable for you to go out there and compete in the marketplace. So what government ought to be doing is getting out of your way. It's not so much sometimes what you do, but what you don't do that empowers the private sector. And so what we're doing with our Office of Economic Development is trying to be facilitators that empower the private sector, to keep us off your backs and out of your wallets. We've hired Spencer Eccles, who you know from the Eccles family, that's doing a great job of leading that charge as a private entrepreneur himself, who's been there, done that. We've added as a volunteer Josh Romney for our outreach efforts outside of the borders of the state of Utah. Derek Miller, who's been involved with this for a number of years, who's helped us bring in such businesses as eBay, Disney Interactive, Hershey, Procter & Gamble, and others, which are finding a safe haven, a fertile field, and a responsive government that's business-friendly in this environment today. It's no reason why organizations like this and others are one of the best places in America to do business. People recognize that Utah is business-friendly. We, in fact, expect great things from the entrepreneurs from the private sector. And I appreciate the fact that people are recognizing that position we're taking here in Utah. Let me just again talk about education. We had a great success yesterday. I kicked off my Governor's Education Excellence Commission. It's brought together 25 of the leaders in education from different perspectives. It's the UEA leaders, it's the teachers union and non-union teachers. It's in fact superintendents, principals, school board members, business, private sector people. It's our higher education, our UCAT folks, all coming together for the common goal of what can we do to improve education excellence in the state of Utah. What can we do, in fact, to make sure that our student population has every opportunity to get an education and develop skills and intellect that they can compete not only just here in Utah, but throughout America and now on a global stage. I think everybody left yesterday thinking, boy, we're on the right track here. We're bringing people together to find solutions to very difficult problems that are uniquely Utah's. And I appreciate the fact we kicked off something I think is going to give us some significant recommendations before the end of this year that we're going to be able to implement. It's not just enough of talking about it. For the first time, the governor is sitting down, spending the 3 hours, rolling up sleeves, listening, learning, and contributing, so that when we're all done with this, we're going to have buy-in from all the stakeholders around the table that we can actually go out there with recommendations to implement and raise the bar for education. That's the best thing we can do for our young people. We want our young people to be able to, in fact, compete in the marketplace. We've got to provide them with good education and those opportunities to develop those skills to compete. Two last things before I sit down. Our energy program. Again, never before we had a plan. We all lament the fact that America is not energy independent, and it should be. We have plenty of energy. They ought to have some kind of a Manhattan energy project in this country. I can't control what's happening necessarily in Washington, D.C., but I can and am and will control what's happening here in Utah. We are putting together a 10-year plan for energy in development in Utah. We have energy opportunities with our traditional resources of coal, oil, and gas. We're working with new technology to, in fact, improve the opportunities to use those like coal, with rich in coal, with carbon capture, carbon sequestration, coal gasification, providing whole new generations of opportunity for our traditional fuels in a more environmentally sensitive way. But I'm a free market person. I believe there's other opportunities out there with renewables. And we're leading in Utah on renewables. We've got private sector research and production being done by Hebert technologies on geothermal, hot water heat. We have a wind farm, 95 windmills down in Beaver County on wind power that we're using to generate, selling to California. We export energy out of Utah. And that helps us keep energy costs down in Utah, which is significantly good for our quality of life and for our economic development and prosperity. Last but not least, again, we're bringing people together in other areas. I see Lynn Ward's here, part of my commission on to optimize government services. Never before have we had somebody take a look at state government from an inside-out look, to turn it upside down, shake it, rattle it around, and see if we can find better ways to be more efficient. We will find some savings, that's true. They'll find other ways to maybe do more with the same. It's not just doing more with less, it's doing more with the same, as the demands of the marketplace require. We'll have a report on that coming this October, and see if we can't find efficiencies in our state government. And I brought in the leading environmentalist, Ted Wilson, who chairs my Balanced Resource Council. Again, on issues particularly in rural Utah, where energy development, natural resource development has been hindered because of this constant civil war that's been going on between us and the federal government, we've brought together a Balanced Resource Council of people with different points of view, bipartisan in its approach, and now working with Washington, D.C. on our federal land issues. And we're going to have coming here in April, Secretary of Interior Ken Salazar. We haven't had the Secretary of Interior here in the recent generation to actually come and visit Utah. And we're going to be talking about our public lands, our natural resource development, our oil and gas leasing, our resource management plans, things that are near and dear to the people of Utah, particularly in rural Utah, where so much of this is taking place. So being an effective voice for Utah is bringing people together. I come to this position with a background and experience and an understanding of the principles that make us successful. It's probably as well as anybody who's ever sat in this chair. I come from the private sector, involved in construction, real estate development, and owning a couple of daycare centers with my wife. We know what it's like to live in the real world and fight the regulation and taxation the government imposes on you and trying to have a bottom line. I've been there, done that, and quite successfully. 14 years as a county commissioner, understanding that we need to build things bottom up, not top down. It's at that localist levels that you get most of your services. That local government is closest to the people, that understands what needs to take place. And we need to be listening to those local government people, we in the state. And in that partnership where I've been there for 14 years, I understand how it works, how it fits together, working with the legislature all those many years. Again, honored by my peers for that work. And last but not least, I've had the best training ground you can have, being the lieutenant governor for these past over 4 years, and now sitting, as it turns out providentially, here in the number one chair. I understand how it works. I know that we've received great accolades from people outside our borders as the best managed state, the best place for business, and the state best positioned to come out of the economic downturn. I've been there and been a part of that. As Abraham Lincoln said, it's probably not wise to swap your horse in the middle of the stream. We're in the middle of the stream and going in the right direction. So I look for your support. I look to address all these issues as we have opportunities and work with you to make sure that Utah continues to be a great place to live, a great place to raise a family, and a great place to do business. Thank you so very much.